I cheated on my wife. Before you start judging me, there's a lot more to this story than you might think. It's not as simple as tit for tat, and it's definitely not some cheap revenge story. Sure, I cheated because she did it first, but getting caught up in that mess was way more complicated than I ever imagined. The whole thing spiraled into a shitstorm that I'm still trying to crawl out of, even though the damage is done. And yeah, I'm part of the problem. But trust me, she's no angel, and things didn't play out the way you'd expect. If you're here thinking this is going to be one of those stories where it all wraps up neatly, or I'm some sort of hero for getting back at her, you're dead wrong. It's way messier than that. Let me back up a bit. My name's Matt. I'm not special, not someone who stands out in a crowd. Mid-30s, office job, a couple of friends I catch up with for beers every now and then, and, until recently, a wife. We'd been married for 7 years. Not happily, not perfectly, but we were married. I thought we had something solid. You know, that kind of relationship where you weather the storms together. I mean, we fought. A lot sometimes. Over stupid shit, mostly money, house chores, things like that. Then there were the bigger ones, the ones that left us barely talking for days. But I figured that was normal. Couples fight, right? We'd always make up, or at least we'd tell ourselves we had. Then we'd just go back to our routine, burying whatever hadn't been resolved. Honestly, I was convinced that despite all the screaming matches, we loved each other. Love's supposed to be tough, right? We were just going through a rough patch. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. But here's the thing I couldn't see at the time. For the past few years, there was someone else who became almost a fixture in our home. Jess's best friend, Lisa. I didn't think anything of it at first. She'd drop by all the time, for no real reason. Movie nights, dinner hangouts, or sometimes just popping in because she was in the neighborhood. Sometimes it would be planned. Sometimes she'd just text Jess, and then she'd be on the couch before I knew it. It wasn't strange. Hell, Lisa was around so much that she felt like part of the family. I mean, she had a key to the house for emergencies. Jess even joked that Lisa was like our adopted sister. I figured it was nice for Jess to have a friend who was so close, especially since we'd been going through our issues. But now, looking back, I see how stupid I was. Blind, or maybe just too comfortable. But one day, things changed. It was a Tuesday. I remember it so clearly because Jess was at work, and I had the day off for once, a rare break from the office grind. I was looking forward to a lazy day with no plans. Lisa showed up like she often did, no big deal. It was a normal thing for her to drop by when Jess wasn't home, just to hang out. We'd have coffee, chat about random stuff, maybe throw on a show to kill time. I didn't think much of it. We had our own friendship by then, and there was nothing weird about it. Except this time, something was off. I didn't notice it right away, but after a few minutes, I could tell Lisa wasn't her usual self. Normally, she was all jokes and easy conversation. But that day, she seemed serious, almost tense. It was like she had something weighing on her mind, and I could feel it in the way she kept glancing at me, like she was working up the nerve to say something. "Matt," she said after a long silence, her voice steady, but with this edge to it, "we need to talk." I laughed, thinking she was about to unload some trivial drama, or maybe complain about her job. About what? But she didn't laugh back. Instead, she looked me dead in the eye, her face completely serious, and said the words that turned my world upside down. "Jess is cheating on you." For a second, I just stared at her, not processing what she'd just said. It didn't register. My brain refused to accept the words coming out of her mouth. I blinked, trying to laugh it off. "What the hell are you talking about?" Lisa sighed, rubbing her hands together like she was gearing up to drop a bombshell, which I guess she already had. "I've suspected it for a while now," she said, her voice low but clear. "Jess, she's been going out, telling you she's with me, but she's not." At first, I didn't think much of it, but then I started noticing patterns. She'd disappear, and then she'd tell you she was hanging out with me when she wasn't. She even asked me to cover for her a few times when you called. I didn't want to get involved, but, "Matt, I think you need to know." That was the moment when everything in my mind just cracked. It was like someone had taken a sledgehammer to the life I thought I had and shattered it into pieces. I stopped listening to the specifics, whatever other details Lisa was dumping on me. My brain checked out, too busy watching my life collapse in slow motion. Everything suddenly made sense, but at the same time, I wanted it to be bullshit. I wanted to believe Lisa was wrong, or that maybe she was lying, just stirring up trouble. But deep down, I knew. You know when you just know something? Like when all the weird moments you ignored suddenly line up, and the truth slaps you in the face. Yeah, that. I must have looked like I'd seen a ghost because Lisa reached over and put her hand on mine. Her touch was firm, like she was trying to pull me back into reality. "I'm sorry, Matt," she said, her voice soft now. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you needed to know. I'll help you figure it out. You don't have to go through this alone." And that's where it started. The moment when everything began to unravel. My marriage, my trust, and everything I thought I knew about the life I'd built. I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went, or how ugly things were about to get. I didn't plan what happened next. I swear it wasn't supposed to go that way. But when I saw Dave get out of his car, something inside me broke. All the weeks of pent-up frustration, the sleepless nights, the constant paranoia, they boiled over in that moment. My mind went blank and my body moved on its own. The next thing I knew, I was out of the car, charging across the street toward him like I was possessed. It wasn't rational, but nothing about this situation felt rational anymore. Dave didn't see me coming. He was just going about his business, probably thinking it was just another quiet evening after work, heading into his cozy little suburban house. Maybe he was even planning to text Jess once he was inside. The thought made my blood boil even more. I grabbed him by the collar of his jacket, yanking him around to face me. The confusion on his face, the look of pure shock. I'll never forget that. "Why, Dave?" I snarled through clenched teeth, my voice rough and unsteady with rage. "Why the hell are you doing this to me?" My grip tightened, pushing him hard against the rough brick wall of his house. His back hit it with a dull thud, and I saw his eyes widen, not just with confusion, but with fear. That look should have stopped me, but it only fueled the anger burning inside me. "We know each other. You've been to my home. You know what kind of man I am. You know what I'm capable of." I wasn't even sure what I meant by that. I wasn't some violent thug. I wasn't the type to go around making threats or starting fights. But in that moment, I felt like I could do anything. The betrayal, the humiliation, it all came crashing down on me. I felt like I had nothing left to lose, and he needed to feel a fraction of what I was feeling. He needed to know the hell he'd put me through. Dave stammered something, his words tripping over each other, but I didn't hear them. My heart was pounding in my ears, my vision narrowing in on him, my focus so sharp it blocked everything else out. And then, before I could think, before I could stop myself, my fist flew through the air, smashing into his face. The sound it made was sickening, a heavy, wet crack that reverberated in my bones. Dave's head snapped to the side, and he staggered, his legs giving way beneath him. He collapsed to the ground, one hand clutching his cheek where I'd hit him, the other flailing to catch himself on the sidewalk. He looked up at me with wide eyes, blinking rapidly like he couldn't quite process what had just happened. He wasn't the cocky office guy I'd imagined in my head. He looked small, pathetic even, and for a second, that made me feel even worse. I just stood there, staring down at him. I thought maybe I'd feel better, maybe that punch would be some kind of release. But it wasn't. I felt empty. The anger hadn't gone anywhere. It was still there, buzzing beneath the surface, making my hands shake. My knuckles ached from the impact, the skin split open, but I barely noticed. Dave didn't say anything. He didn't try to get up, didn't fight back. He just looked at me like a deer caught in the headlights, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. And in that moment, it hit me. This guy, this pathetic shell on the ground, was never going to give me the answers I wanted. He didn't have them. He was just a coward, too weak to face what he'd done. I turned on my heel without saying another word, walking back to my car. My whole body was trembling now, the adrenaline surging through me like wildfire. I got behind the wheel, slammed the door shut, and just sat there for a second, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't look back at Dave. I didn't need to. He was probably still lying there, trying to piece together what the hell had just happened. But I didn't care anymore. As I sat there, the reality of what I'd done started to sink in. I had no plan, no strategy for what came next. I couldn't go home. Not after what I'd just done. Not after everything I'd found out. The thought of walking through the front door, seeing Jess, pretending everything was fine, it made me sick to my stomach. But I didn't know where else to go either. The truth was, I had no idea what I was supposed to do now. I had crossed the line, and there was no going back. All I knew was that I wanted revenge. Real revenge. Hitting Dave in the face wasn't enough. It didn't make the pain go away. It didn't erase the betrayal or the lies. If anything, it just made everything worse because now I was even more lost, spiraling further into this mess with no way out. I didn't want to be the guy who threw punches in the dark. I wanted them both to suffer the way I was suffering. I wanted retribution. I wanted to make them regret every moment they'd stolen from me. I reached for my phone without thinking, my hands still shaking. Lisa was the only person who came to mind. She answered after one ring, like she'd been waiting for me to call, her voice steady and calm, a sharp contrast to the chaos in my head. "What happened?" she asked quietly, as if she already knew I'd done something stupid. I confronted him. I said, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. I hit him. I didn't know what else to do. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, hear her thinking. Then, with a calmness that almost unnerved me, she said, "Come over. You need to clear your head. We'll figure it out together. You don't have to go through this alone." And that was it. I didn't argue. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even think. I just started driving. Home was the last place I wanted to be. The thought of seeing Jess, of pretending to act normal, made me feel like I was choking. So I went to Lisa's, because right now, she was the only person who understood what I was going through. She was the only one on my side. But what I didn't realize then, what I couldn't see, was how deep into this mess I was already in. And things were about to get a whole lot worse. When I arrived at Lisa's place, it was like she'd been waiting for me all along. She didn't say much, just gave me this knowing look, like she already knew what had gone down with Dave. There was no need to ask any more questions. She could see it all written across my face. I was a mess inside and out. She pulled me in without a word and handed me a glass of wine almost immediately. I took it without thinking, grateful for anything to dull the storm swirling in my head. She poured herself a glass too, and for a while, we just sat there, sipping quietly. There was something oddly comforting about it. We talked a bit, but nothing important. It was small talk, a distraction, her asking me about work, making jokes about the old days, trying to pull me out of the darkness that was wrapping itself tighter around me with each passing minute. The wine helped a little, but the anger, the confusion, the hurt, they were still there, just simmering below the surface. Before I knew it, we'd finished the first bottle. Lisa didn't even ask before she went to the kitchen and pulled out a second. She poured the wine like it was water, and I didn't protest. It wasn't long before my mind started to feel foggy, the alcohol loosening my tongue, dulling the sharp edges of everything that had happened. We drank, and we talked, though I can't remember about what exactly. It was like I was on autopilot, just trying to keep myself from drowning in my own thoughts. Then, somewhere in the middle of that second bottle, Lisa's whole demeanor shifted. She wasn't just playing the comforting friend anymore. She leaned in closer, her eyes locking onto mine in a way that made me pause. Her voice dropped, soft and deliberate. "Do you want revenge?" she asked, her tone carrying something deeper than just curiosity. I remember looking at her, feeling a rush of heat in my chest. "Of course I do," I said without hesitation. The words felt heavy, almost like a confession. That's when she did something I didn't expect. She leaned over, took the wine glass from my hand, and set it down on the table. Then, in one smooth motion, she climbed onto my lap, her legs straddling me. I froze, my heart racing, but my brain was too slow to process what was happening. Her face was inches from mine, her breath warm against my skin as she whispered, "Let's get revenge together." I should have pushed her away. I should have stopped it right then and there. But I didn't. The alcohol had numbed my common sense, and the anger, the betrayal, it all clouded my judgment. And in that moment, all I could think about was how much I wanted to hurt Jess the way she'd hurt me. So I let it happen. I kissed Lisa back, pulled her closer, and before I knew it, we were tangled together on her couch, a mess of limbs and desperation. But it wasn't what I thought it would be. The sex was clumsy, rushed, and completely detached. I was too drunk to really care, too numb to feel anything meaningful. Lisa was eager, almost too eager, like she had something to prove. But there was no passion, no fire. It wasn't about desire. It was about power, about revenge, about reclaiming something we both felt had been taken from us. At some point in the middle of it all, I noticed her phone. She was holding it up, the screen glowing in the dim light of the room. She was taking pictures of us. It didn't click in my mind at first, but then I saw the flash, saw her snap another one, and my brain jolted back to reality. "What the hell are you doing?" I muttered, my voice slurred from the alcohol, but still clear enough to convey my discomfort. Lisa just smiled like it was no big deal. "Relax," she said, taking another shot. "It's just for fun. I'll delete them later." "No," I said, shaking my head, trying to grab her phone. "I don't want any pictures. This is too much." But I was too slow, too drunk, and she just laughed, brushing me off like it was nothing. "Don't worry," she said again, her tone light, almost teasing. "I'll take care of it. Trust me." I didn't push the issue, even though I should have. I let her keep the pictures because, honestly, I didn't have the energy to fight her on it. I just wanted the night to end. Everything felt wrong, like I had crossed a line I couldn't come back from, but I was too deep in it to stop. I didn't stay the night at Lisa's. I couldn't. After everything that had happened, I felt sick, disgusted with myself. I crashed on her couch for a while, maybe an hour or two, but eventually I got up and left without saying much. I didn't go home, though. I couldn't face Jess. Not after what I'd done, not after the mess I'd made of everything. I drove around aimlessly for hours, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next, but no matter where I went, the weight of what had just happened followed me. When I finally checked my phone, it was lit up with a string of missed calls from Jess. 7, 8, maybe more. I couldn't bring myself to call her back. What would I even say? My guilt was eating me alive, but at the same time, I was still angry, still consumed by the idea of revenge. Jess was the one who'd betrayed me first, right? So why did I feel like the bad guy? But even then, in the back of my mind, I knew something wasn't right. I didn't trust Lisa, not anymore. The way she'd taken those pictures, the way she'd insisted on keeping them, it didn't sit well with me. I should have stopped her, should have said something, but now it was too late. The next day was worse than I could have imagined. I had thought the night with Lisa was the lowest point, but that was before the consequences of her actions started to unfold. The mess she'd created was about to explode in a way I hadn't anticipated, and I was trapped in the middle of it, with no idea how to get out. I came home later than I should have. I was trying to delay the inevitable, trying to figure out what I'd say when I walked through that door. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened the second I stepped inside. The door had barely clicked shut behind me when Jess stormed out from the living room, her face red with rage. Before I could even get a word out, she slapped me across the face, so hard my ears rang. "What the hell, Jess?" I shouted, rubbing my cheek, still dazed from the blow. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she threw her phone at me, hard enough that it almost hit me in the chest. "Look at it," she screamed, her voice shaking with fury. I fumbled with her phone, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. And then it hit me like a freight train. There, on the screen, was a photo. Not just any photo, the photo. It was me and Lisa, naked, tangled together in the most compromising position imaginable. I felt my stomach drop as I stared at it. a cold wave of dread washing over me. "Explain that," Jess spat, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "How the hell could you do this to me? With her?" My heart raced, but anger flared up in me too. "You want to talk about betrayal?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You cheated on me first. With Dave. You think I don't know? Lisa told me everything. You're the reason all of this happened." Jess's eyes widened in shock. "What the hell are you talking about? Dave? Are you out of your goddamn mind? I never cheated on you with him. Or anyone else." I laughed bitterly, pacing back and forth as I tried to hold on to the narrative that had fueled my actions. "Bullshit, Jess. Lisa told me everything. How you'd been sneaking around, making excuses. How you had her cover for you. She lied, Matt," Jess yelled, her voice breaking as tears welled up in her eyes. "I never slept with anyone. I didn't cheat. I've never done anything behind your back. Why the hell would you believe her over me?" We were both screaming now, hurling insults at each other, dredging up every grievance we'd buried over the years. She called me a liar, a cheater, a coward. I called her a manipulator, a deceiver, a traitor. We tore into each other, all the pent-up resentment and pain exploding in that moment. But underneath it all, there was something gnawing at me, something I didn't want to acknowledge but couldn't ignore anymore. "What about all those times you said you were with Lisa?" I shot back, desperate to cling to the story I'd been fed. "She said you weren't. She told me you were with someone else." Jess threw her hands up in frustration, tears streaming down her face. "I was at work, Matt. Or running errands. Or doing whatever the hell else I needed to do. Not cheating on you. Why didn't you ever just ask me?" The anger was still there, but doubt started creeping in. It was hard to ignore the raw emotion in her voice, the genuine pain behind her words. I stared at her, the fight draining out of me as the pieces started to fall into place. "Lisa," I muttered more to myself than to her. "She set this up. She played both of us." Jess blinked, her expression shifting from anger to realization. Yeah, I think she did. She's been stirring shit up between us for months now. Hasn't she? Getting in your head, making you doubt everything. God, I can't believe I didn't see it sooner." I sank down onto the couch, my head in my hands. The weight of what had happened, what I had done, was crushing me. Lisa had manipulated me, twisted everything, and I had fallen right into her trap. I had destroyed my own marriage because of it. Jess didn't sit down, but she wasn't screaming anymore. Her voice was softer now, though still laced with bitterness. "Our marriage is ruined, Matt. Even if Lisa set us up, even if she lied, I don't know how we come back from this." I looked up at her, feeling the full weight of what she was saying. And she was right. We had torn each other apart, and now there was nothing left to rebuild. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "I didn't know what else to do. I thought." "You didn't think, Matt. You let her get inside your head. You let her destroy us." We sat in silence for a while, the tension in the room suffocating. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Jess spoke again. "I'm calling her," she said, pulling out her phone. "I want to hear what she has to say for herself." I watched as she dialed Lisa's number, her fingers trembling slightly. Lisa picked up after a few rings, her voice casual, almost smug. "Jess, hey," Lisa said. "I've been meaning to talk to you." "Yeah, I bet you have," Jess replied coldly. "We need to meet. Now. You and me. Somewhere quiet." There was a brief pause on Lisa's end. Then she agreed. "Fine, but not at your place. I'll meet you somewhere neutral. I'll come alone." Jess hung up the phone, her eyes still fixed on me. "I'm going to meet her. I need to hear this from her directly. But I don't trust her, Matt. I want you to come too, just not where she can see you. Stay hidden, listen in. I want to know what she says when she doesn't think you're there." I nodded, knowing that this confrontation was inevitable. I needed to know the truth, needed to hear it from Lisa's own mouth. But at the same time, I knew this wouldn't fix anything. Jess was right. Our marriage was broken. Even if Lisa had been the one pulling the strings, the damage was already done. "We'll meet her," I said, standing up and grabbing my jacket. "But you're right. Our marriage, I don't think there's any coming back from this." Jess didn't respond. She just grabbed her keys, and we headed out the door, both of us bracing for the confrontation that would either give us closure or shatter what little remained. We met Lisa at a quiet spot outside town, a small, rundown cafe that barely had anyone inside, the kind of place where no one would pay attention to a heated conversation. Jess insisted on meeting somewhere neutral, somewhere that didn't have the weight of our home hanging over it. Lisa showed up a few minutes after us, wearing that same calm, confident expression she always had, like she already knew how this was going to play out. Jess didn't waste time. The moment Lisa sat down, she went right for it. "I know what you've been doing," Jess said, her voice sharp, teetering between anger and disbelief. "You've been stirring shit between me and Matt, haven't you? Trying to wreck everything we had. I don't even know why. What the hell is wrong with you?" Lisa didn't flinch. She just leaned back in her chair, her lips curling into a bitter smile. "I didn't have to wreck anything, Jess. You did that all on your own." I was hiding behind a parked car a few feet away, listening to every word. My heart was racing, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it. The moment I'd get answers. The truth about everything. "What the fuck are you talking about?" Jess snapped, her voice breaking. "I didn't do anything to you, Lisa. We've been friends for years. I've always been there for you. Why would you do this to me?" Lisa let out a dry, almost mocking laugh. "Yeah, friends," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I've always been your little psychic, haven't I? Always following you around, always in your shadow. You've had everything, Jess, work, home, a husband who worshipped the ground you walked on. And me? I had to stand by and watch while you took everything for granted." Jess's eyes widened, stunned into silence for a moment. "You've got to be kidding me," she finally said, her voice shaking with disbelief. "Is that what this is about? You're jealous?" "Jealous?" Lisa's eyes flashed with something dark, something twisted. "You have no idea what it's like to be second to someone your whole life. To watch someone who has everything, who doesn't even see what they've got. Yeah, maybe I was jealous. Maybe I wanted to take something back from myself. You cheated on everything, Jess. Your job, your friendships, your husband. I never cheated on Matt," Jess shouted, standing up from the table, her hands clenched into fists. "You're fucking lying, Lisa. I never did anything to you. And I sure as hell never cheated." But Lisa just smirked, leaning forward. "Doesn't matter what you did or didn't do. What matters is that I could see it all falling apart. And I didn't need to do much to push it over the edge. You always had a perfect little life, Jess. And I decided, fuck it, why not take at least some of it away from you?" I could see Jess's face crumple as the realization hit her. The betrayal wasn't just about me. Lisa had been playing a long game, twisting the knife every chance she got. Jess had trusted her, leaned on her, and now everything was unraveling in front of her. She took a step back, her hands trembling. I can't believe this," Jess whispered, her voice raw. "We've been friends for years, Lisa. How could you do this?" I'd heard enough. The truth had finally come out, ugly and twisted. I stepped out from the shadows, making my presence known. Lisa saw me immediately, and for the first time that night, something flickered in her eyes, maybe fear, maybe guilt. But instead of saying anything, she just turned and walked away, her footsteps quick and deliberate, like she had accomplished what she came to do. I didn't chase her. There was no point. She had gotten what she wanted. She'd torn us apart, destroyed everything. And now there was nothing left to salvage. I turned to Jess, my heart pounding in my chest. "Jess!" She didn't even let me finish. Her eyes, full of anger and hurt, locked onto mine. "Go to hell, Matt," she said, her voice ice-cold, filled with finality. And then she turned and walked away, too, leaving me standing there, alone in the aftermath of the wreckage. I knew, standing there in that quiet, empty place, that my marriage was over. There was no saving it. I'd ruined it. Jess had ruined it. And Lisa, well, she had orchestrated the whole damn thing. I couldn't shake the feeling of being a fool, a complete idiot who had been played by the one person I thought I could trust. It hit me like a brick wall. I had fallen for Lisa's manipulation, for her games, and in the process, I destroyed everything. But as I stood there, watching Jess disappear, one thought kept burning in the back of my mind. I might have lost everything, but I wasn't going to let Lisa walk away from this without consequences. She had messed with my life, with my marriage, and I wasn't just going to sit back and do nothing. There was still something I could do. I drove to Lisa's house. I didn't even think about it. My mind was set, and I knew exactly what I had to do. When I got there, she didn't want to let me in at first. She stood at the door, hesitant, probably sensing that something was off. But I played the part perfectly. I put on the mask of a man who had fallen for her, who had been broken by Jess, and now wanted something different. I told her I had loved her for a long time, that everything with Jess had only made me realize what I really wanted. Lisa was good at playing games, but so was I. I watched her eyes soften, watched her smile grow as she believed every word I said. It didn't take much to convince her to let me in. We spent hours together, talking, pretending like none of the chaos between us even mattered. I swallowed every ounce of rage, every bit of disgust I had, and I let her believe that I was hers. When she finally went to the shower, I knew my chance had come. I'd watched her unlock her phone earlier, taking careful note of the password she used. The moment she disappeared into the bathroom, I grabbed her phone off the table. My hands were shaking, but I moved fast, unlocking it and scrolling straight to the gallery. There was everything I needed, all the photos, the evidence. I started transferring the entire gallery to my phone, file after file. I didn't bother to look at them yet. I just needed to get as much as I could before she came back. Within a few minutes, it was done. I slipped her phone back where it was, walked out of her house, and drove off without a word. She had no idea what had just happened, and honestly, I didn't care anymore. I had what I needed, and now it was my turn to play the game. Sitting in my car a few blocks away, I started scrolling through the photos I'd taken from her phone. There were more than I expected. Dozens of racy pictures, private shots she had probably never meant for anyone else to see. Some of them were just for her. Others I assumed she'd sent to different people. God knows who. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that I had them, and I knew exactly how to use them. Within 20 minutes, they were all over the internet. I created anonymous accounts on every platform I could think of, spreading the photos like wildfire. I sent them to everyone Lisa knew, her coworkers, her friends, her family. Every site I could find that wouldn't immediately block me, I posted them. Every social circle she was part of, I made sure they saw the worst of it. I knew what I was doing was illegal. I knew she could sue me, press charges, ruin me in her own way. But I didn't care anymore. None of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was that I was going to ruin her life, even if it was just for a little while. She had taken everything from me, my marriage, my trust, my sanity. And now I was taking something from her. When it was done, when I had sent the last photo and watched the fallout start to spread, I sat back in my car, my heart still racing. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. Maybe it was twisted, maybe it was wrong, but I didn't care. I had taken my revenge, and that was all that mattered. There was still the path of divorce ahead. Jess and I were done, and there would be lawyers and settlements and all the ugly details to deal with. But for now, I had done what I needed to do. Lisa was going to feel the consequences of what she had done to me. Maybe she'd recover. Maybe she wouldn't. Either way, I was satisfied. And now that I'm done writing all of this, I feel better. I don't expect anyone to forgive me or understand, but I needed to get it off my chest. Thanks for listening.